If you are cycling with a friend and get left behind, you might say, "Hang on a minute." If the car starts to pull away with your shopping bag trapped in the door, you might say this rather loudly. If the doorbell rings while you are on the phone, you might say this a bit more softly. If someone claims to write shorthand at 300 words a minute after only a week's study, you will certainly say this, or something like it, with more than a hint of disbelief in your voice. I hope you have resolved never to allow such words to form in your mind or mouth when the going gets bumpy during shorthand writing. When I first began to use shorthand in an office situation, it was the norm to take dictation of reports and letters from a variety of personnel. There were no computers then for them to type their own. Right from the beginning, I made my mind up never to ask anyone to slow down. It would have damaged any shorthand reputation that I could build up. If I could not manage, it was up to me to improve my speed, which I did later on at evening classes. I cannot claim to have always avoided using some ploy to gain time, because if I was getting well behind and in danger of missing a chunk, the priority would always be to get a full and accurate note, rather than worry about my shorthand reputation. But resist I did, because if it became a habit, that would be the proverbial slippery slope to ever-increasing failure. If anyone decided they needed to speak painfully slowly just for my benefit, I would make an extra effort to stay right on top of their words, so that as soon as they had finished speaking, I was ready to look up innocently, as if to say, "Next word?" They had obviously found it necessary to do so for another writer in the past, and I did not want to get stuck in that category. But I also had to have a plan of action when things were too fast. I had an armoury of ruses to interrupt the flow, asking them to repeat a word, spell something, or checking some detail. None of these imply that the problem is any lack of speed capability. On the contrary, it was always done in the spirit of being particularly fussy about accuracy which indeed I was. In fact, it was what I was paid for, not an added extra. From a practical point of view, that frame of mind was essential, because any errors would mean a complete retype, as it was all done on typewriters and not computers, directly onto paper, and not stored in digital form. Such subterfuges would have been desperate measures, and seldom possible to use, and generally the only course was to redouble my efforts to keep up, just as I had done in the shorthand class. Fortunately, they were mostly composing their reports and correspondence as they went, and so the speed of speaking was not that great, and there were lots of pauses. Without computers, it was impractical to produce endless drafts, and so reading back the shorthand for them to check and revise their wording was the custom, and confidence in one's outlines was vital. The days of the shorthand typist taking direct dictation may be long gone now, but the desire to maintain your skill and reputation for fast and reliable shorthand writing is one to be encouraged. Whatever you are using it for, you want to be writing comfortably and neatly, with the confidence that you can read back fluently, even from cold notes. Having speed in hand makes this possible, and ensures that your shorthand is dependable, devoid of gaps or indecipherable outlines, and a pleasure to use. Even if you do not require to write verbatim, but only need to jot down the main points of the meeting, speech, or event, the faster and more easily you can write shorthand, the fuller your notes can be. If you were taking notes of a meeting in longhand, you would probably only write headings, short phrases, and single words, and rely on memory to expand them. With a comfortable shorthand speed, you can write a whole sentence in the time it takes for the speaker to pause while he or she thinks of their next point. You can then give more attention to proceedings, and so your notes will make more sense, rather than be a jumble of bits written hastily in the hopes of sorting it out later. Entirely verbatim in such a situation would not be helpful, as you would need to relive the whole meeting in order to summarize it. During your study and speed practice times, verbatim has to be the only acceptable aim. Gaps may appear, but they do not have to be tolerated. On the contrary, they should be pounced on, dealt with, and expunged. They may occur when you are pushing the speed boundaries, but this should be a matter of concern, not of indifference. Verbatim and just notes are two different countries whose inhabitants have vastly different lives and comfort levels. I would like to encourage you to remain a permanent citizen of the former, and in the latter, a distinguished visitor on assignment, but with a very firm grip on your shorthand passport.